Due to technical difficulties, we were unable to record the beginning of Jane's program, so we joined it in progress.
That is Dick. I think his last name was Green. My father had interesting friends. That's how we ended up with some Austrian Lipizzans staying at our farm to recover when the last Lipizzan show, the real Lipizzan show from Austria, came through here in the early 1960s. Yeah, Dad knew somebody that knew the groom, that knew the trade, and so we ended up with two Lipizzans staying at our stable. It was a horse farm in Victor. I grew up riding horses, so why not ride a llama? Dick came out every year that I can remember, and he had a traveling small circus show. And he wintered down south, and then he would make his way north, and I think he was going up to the Enchanted Forest in the Adirondacks. That rings a bell somehow. And he would put up for about 2 weeks to lay over and give his animals a rest in between the next, the last show and the next gig. So there were checkerboard ponies, Shetland ponies, black and white, that were Liberty ponies, and they would go in all sorts of formations. There was the llama, there was a trained mule, there was full-size horses, there were trained trick dogs. He really wanted to buy our little poodle because he could balance and sit up on Dick's palm. I said, no. So he gave me a little ruff to put around Tootie's neck so I could do circus tricks with him. And there also was an elephant named Baby Boo. And my mother put her foot down when he talked about bringing the elephant one year because she didn't think the barn floor would hold it. So I grew up with these animals in this circus that came once a year. And before he left, he would have the animals brush off the dust and refresh their memories a little bit. And he would put on a show for our friends and neighbors. So that was my childhood. So when I sent word to a friend of mine who used to be a manager, actually an advance man, for a circus, asking him, where the circus was located, could I use it in the program, because it is one that still is operating. He said, no, it's out of state, not New York. He said, what, are you going to be a 1st of May person? I didn't know what that term meant. So I went and looked it up and then discovered that it meant someone who, when the circus usually got on the road, the 1st of May every year, when the roads had dried up a little bit. So a person who was green about everything with the circus. And so I sent him that slide and said, no, I'm not a 1st of May. This was my farm when I was growing up. So I'm not a 1st of May. Most of you would be considered 1st of May people. Anybody here worked with a circus?
I traveled with a Renaissance festival that had a whole lot of people in it that were circus people.
That's close.
For 10 years.
That's close. Were you up at Sterling?
Yeah, for 10 years.
How long ago? Did you know John and Jennifer Benda? He did a lot of roles. Jennifer did a lot of roles.
I don't know their names, but I was quite close with Johnny Fox, who owned the Freakatorium Museum in New York. So.
Yeah, okay, so we're going to get out, and I'm going to try an experiment here. I've got a YouTube. I'm plugged into the internet, and we're going to get a little bit of a mood going here. There's probably going to be a stupid ad before this plays. But I want to show you. No, that's not right. I'm going to show you some marvelous images of circus wagons as they're coming into town. And I don't know why this is not coming up. I'm going to give it 2 more seconds and I'm going to get tired of this and I'm going to can it. Yeah, okay. No Gordon McRae singing Sawdust and Spangles from the show Jumbo. We will not be moody. But the circus is coming. The circus is coming. Here is the circus wagon. Don't know what the show is, but you may recognize this downtown. Do you recognize it? Okay. Is that Nunda House on the far left?
Yes.
Yes, I thought so. Yeah. They had a ballroom up top, just like the Livingston House does. And there was a marvelous 1830s Masonic hall up above where the liquor store is now, and that's gone. That's gone. But anyways, the circus is coming to town, and we're going to hear a little bit from the Lockport Daily Journal from May 31st, 1873, as I show you some wagons and images from the Penn Yan History Center, the Yates County History Center in Penn Yan. I was on a research trip there recently, and they were kind enough to share a whole bunch of stuff with me. So when you look at these, imagine how someone in 1873 would feel when this panoply of animals and wagons covered with gilt and fancy paint and uniformed band members all go by you on your main drag. So, menagerie and circus, first of the season. So it must have been around May. The circus, which everybody likes to see, is coming. With what enthusiasm do all run to see the parade, to hear the music of the band, and look at the gaily dressed performers with the long caravan of cages, followed by elephants, camels, and ponies. And last, but far from least, the mules. How the children scream with unbounded delight as the procession comes into view. And how Mary Jane rushes from the kitchen, and the front part of every house is covered with people. A head to every pane of glass quickly presents itself. And after the procession passes, how quickly the dinner is dispatched and preparations made to go to the show. Such a commotion will be kicked up in our town soon, for be it known that Bailey and Company's Menagerie and Museum and James Melville's Australian Circus will give us a grand parade Friday, June 6th. That was all one parade. It really was quite splendid. Now, we know from reading books and seeing movies and maybe even staying awake during history class when we were doing European history, that the nobles and the wealthy would have court jesters. They would have clowns. And one circus person said, "It takes smarts to be so foolish," which is very true. So mostly European roots in circus. And of course, the whole juggling and tumbling and things, these go back thousands of years. We've got a very bent over contortionist here, and someone is playing a hurdy-gurdy next to them to provide music. And this is the sort of act that, for the common folks, you would see it going from town to town to town, and not really congregating in one place unless there was a fair. Then you would have acts come in, and pickpockets come in, and ladies of dubious morals come in, because that's what happened at fairs. And so, we see this across the world, that roaming acts serve the common people at fairs and the wealthy in their homes. There's some nice image here of some funny stilt walkers, again, medieval, and then look at the Chinese acrobats. There's a long history there. I mean, it almost looks like he's going to play Jenga with the lower blocks, and wow, that would be exciting. That would be exciting. But for our purposes, what we want to pay attention to is the equine tradition of trick riding. Over in England, there was a cavalry officer retired named Philip Astley, and he is generally considered to be the father of the modern circus. There's a couple reasons for this. I mean, we call it Roman riding today, but this is Philip. This is what he was doing. And how he got into this is he taught riding. He and his wife, Patty, had a horsemanship school just outside of London. And they would teach riding in the morning, and then Patty, he, and their students would show off their tricks to paying patrons in the afternoons. And later, to give them a little bit of a rest between the acts, he would hire in Punch and Judy shows, other trained animals, acrobats, to entertain between the equestrian demonstrations. What I read was that Patty had an act where she would tear around the arena on the back, bare back, tear around, standing on her feet, with her hands covered with swarms of bees. Wouldn't occur to me to do, but it was an attraction. I mean, just imagine, you can't fall down and grab the mane. So this is a picture of his original amphitheater. The print was done in 1777. We're seeing the front of it on the left and the back of it on the right with the ring. And I want to see if I can, pardon me a moment, I want to see if I can get this a little bit unblurred. Yeah, that's the amount of pixels on that picture.
So
And I
what
guess
was
it's,
inside the building of the arena is
there is no inside yet.
Oh,
There's no inside yet. It's all done outdoors.
okay, because the building looks big.
Yeah, the building's big, but those are galleries and places for a little bit of entertainment. It's not an interior circus yet, but wait.
Was that in England?
I'm sorry?
Where was that?
England, London. Yep. Philip and his wife did very well with this. And by the early 1780s, he was able to build an indoor arena, called Astley's Royal Amphitheater. And this will look kind of familiar as far as the setup. They've got a ring, and I mean, it's almost like an opera house inside. You've got a stage, because there were other entertainments that went on. There actually was theater that went on too. And he did very, very well. Now, Astley is the one that developed the 42-foot diameter ring that is the standard for equestrian trick riding. Because at that diameter, you get centrifugal force when you're getting on the horse, when you're trying to stay on the horse. And circuses still use this today. It's like the perfect diameter that works well with the horse's pace and with your need to get off and on and stay on when you're up there. So you can see there's trained horses. There's a royal box there on the left-hand side. And he was very, very successful. He had pupils. One of his pupils was a hurdle rider. That was his specialty. Last name of Ducrot. And this shows him at the Astley's amphitheater in 1830. And yeah, look at that. We're jumping a hurdle with the horse, 2 horses, bareback. Yeah, people paid money to see that. We'd even pay money to see that today. I mean, that's a good trick. And of course, people people liked it and thought, gosh, I could do this. I could make money at this. And so Charles Dibdin also built an amphitheater similar to Astley's, but he is the first person to use the term circus. Circus, after the Latin word for circle. And he borrowed the Astley's 42-foot diameter circle idea, and he started a rival venue not far from Astley's. And he took on a couple of Astley's pupils as partners. But this is the sort of idea that came to the United States. Our first circuses in the United States were solid, purpose-built buildings. They weren't roaming. That was for the itinerant entertainers. You had to go to the circus in a building that was designed for that purpose. And that's what came over to the United States. It really isn't until after the Revolutionary War that we see this happening. Remember, Congress had forbidden all sorts of entertainment, theater, opera, whatever. It's all forbidden by the Continental Congress during the war. But after the war, things relaxed, and the first circuses were built. There was one in New York City, there was one in Philadelphia. But wait, what? What do you mean? We've got a Rochester connection to Astley's? Yeah, we do. We do. Meet Charlie Backus. He was the black sheep of an otherwise notable family. They didn't talk about him much, but he talked about them. His relatives included Garrett Smith, William Fitzhugh, helped found Rochester, lived up at Hampton's Corners by the salt mine. Yeah, Elizabeth Smith Miller, who was William Fitzhugh's daughter. No, her mother was William Fitzhugh's daughter. Sorry, generational confusion. The Reverend Azel Backus, very pious gentleman. And Dr. Frederick Backus. Now, if you've been to Genesee Country Museum, you might have seen the Livingston Backus House. Yeah. Although primarily known as a minstrel show performer, he did spend from 1859 to 1861 performing as a clown with Astley's Amphitheater and Burton's Circus before returning to the United States. And, politically incorrect, but there is him in his African getup. He was one of the original founders of the famous San Francisco minstrels. Mark Twain was very fond of them and of Charlie Backus. And actually, when Backus left the troupe, they tottered on for a few years and then finally folded. He was a force of nature when it came to humor, and he loved to talk about his relatives. Kind of on the genre of the book about Rochester called Smugtown. You've ever read that one? Woo. Yeah. So he liked to talk about his relatives. He is buried up in Mount Hope Cemetery. And his relative that you may know of is Dr. Frederick Backus. If you've ever been to the Livingston Backus house, one of the big pillars, the cook, I used to cook there, at Genesee Country Village, that was his uncle. So circuses do come to the Genesee Country. Some of the first things that wander through are trained bear acts. And we don't have an awful lot that was reproducible as far as images of news articles, but we do know that circuses, the bear acts did come through our area, and those were quite popular. We're not very fond of that sort of thing today, but it was fine back then. And this sort of act did continue into the 20th century. So let's track the progress of one bear act. And it's kind of an interesting story that I found while noodling around in the old papers. May 16th, 1873, Geneva. The man with the trained bear appeared among us yesterday to the delight of young America. and the consternation of dogs of corrupt blood. So all the mutts having issues with it. May 21st, Waterloo Weekly. 2 little articles. The people of our village were quite amused on Wednesday evening last by the performance of a trained bear, which a man was performing with on Fall Street. The trained bear, leading a man through the streets who talked French, was in town last week.
Yeah.
It is confusing. The man walked upright and so did the bear most of the time. The bear allowed the man to leave him, loose bear, in a crowd of people, and circulate through the crowd and collect money in his hat. It was a very accommodating animal. And yeah, it is also confusing. Was the bear circulating with the hat or was the man circulating with the hat? Who spoke French? So May 29th, Brockport, they're up in Brockport now. A trained bear exhibited upon our village streets last evening, attracted a great deal of attention. The little folks were delighted. And May 31st, up in Lockport, not too far from Brockport, the man with the trained bear has reached Lockport. They arrived this morning. See, the editors are kind of contacting each other and keeping track and building excitement for this act as it goes along. But there's a sad end to it. In December, Painted Post Times said, "Sad death by a bear. Our citizens well remember an Italian and his wife," they may have been confused on what language the man was speaking, "who passed through this village last summer exhibiting a trained bear, which afforded amusement to many. This bear, though well trained, showed the natural viciousness of such animals. It will be remembered that while performing in Mr. Stone's yard, the man fell and the bear pounced upon him, and it was with great difficulty that the woman released her husband from his perilous position by pounding him over the head with a pike pole." Again, but the husband or the bear? "Now this woman has met with a frightful death by this bear. The unfortunate Italian may be well advised to change his occupation." He had left her alone in their house they were renting or something with the bear and gone to town, and the bear attacked her and crushed her to death. And he came back and found his wife crushed. There's a further article the next summer saying that the man is back. We hope he's changed his bear. We hope he has a different bear. Anyway, so things like this came through, and up at Frank Davis's Hall from South Butler, now at Genesee Country Village, there was a trained bear that was exhibiting with Bidwell's Comedy Company. And they stayed there for a week, and the theater was absolutely crowded. And the bear's name was Jenny. What happened was Frank Davis bought the bear and kept it as a pet for I don't know how long. But I am waiting from eBay. It didn't come in time. I just secured a photograph of Frank and the bear. Not here yet. But in any case, so these acts went on into the 20th century.
What was written on that door?
It was the name of the comedy company. I had Peter Wisby took the photograph, and it's a little hard to read. But I've read it. I've been up in the hall, and yeah, it mentions the people that were in the company, and the name of the theatrical company, and the name of actually 2 bears, and the dates that they were there. And it was like around 1911. Yeah, a lot later than you would expect a trained bear act to go on, but it did. Most common coming through our area and Western New York and the rest of America was what they called a menagerie. It's like a zoo on wheels. Unless you were in a large city, there would be no opportunity other than going to a menagerie to go and see the exotic animals, ostriches, emus, wild zebras, elephants, big boa constrictors. And so there's a series here because these ads often took up a full newspaper column. You can't get it onto one screen and show it. I'm going to sequentially show you this ad from 1837 from the Livingston Register. So the performance of the pony and the monkey will be at 2. So maybe the monkey is riding the pony. Look at all the people riding on the elephant, both elephants. And the animals will be fed between 2 and 3 o'clock because people like to go see a lion gnawing on big bones and chunks and gobbets of meat. That was exciting. And here we go. This is from another ad. The association celebrated menagerie and aviary from the Zoological Institute. Now, this makes it educational, folks. This is not lowbrow entertainment. This is educational because these are from the Zoological Institute. Will be exhibited in Geneseo, positively for one day only, Tuesday, July 28, 1835, from 1 to 4. And for your tickets, you had to pay a quarter. The children under 10 years are at half price. So we're going down here. There's lion, lionesses. Here we go, leopards. They're calling it a unicorn. It looks like a rhinoceros to me, but they're calling it the unicorn. And they've got tigers, they've got a hyena, they've got 2 hyenas, a Bengal tiger, a lion, all sorts of things, camels, pelicans, really quite an assortment. Makes you wonder how they kept all these things fed. And here we go. Plus, if that wasn't enough, there is an act with 112 splendid gray horses, and 60 men are going to do tricks and ride on them and do movements. So, it's interesting here. Look at the above exhibition will be exhibited in Perry on Friday the 24th, Mount Morris on Saturday the 25th, Dansville on Monday the 27th, not going to perform on Sunday, and Avon on Wednesday the 29th. So you'd be tempted to go see this, but maybe the display wasn't all you thought it would be cracked up to be. Hence, the phrase started in the 1930s, he's been to see the elephant, or seeing the elephant. And that means you had high expectations of something, but it was a little disappointing once you got to see the reality. Born in Avon in 1818, really the father of the American circus as it developed. Yankee Fayette Lodovick Robinson was born in Avon. His dad was cobbler. I have not been able to find any ads for the cobbling that they did. But shortly after he was born, they moved to Honeoye, town of Richmond. He went out to Michigan, started a cobbling shop there, shoe shop there. His wife died. He came back and moved down to Dansville. And while he was in Dansville, he found a second wife. He also found the time to publish a satirical newspaper, no copies of which seem to have survived. I would love to find them. So he lived in Dansville briefly, but he had itchy feet. He was an ambitious guy, and he somehow got a hold of 2 really large paintings. And he put them into an enclosed area and charged people to come in and see the paintings. This developed into going on the road with the paintings, going and joining up with some other people who did shows. And pretty soon he had what we would call the modern circus. He's the one that developed 3 rings, not a single ring, like you'd find in New York and Philadelphia. No, this was under a tent, and it was a big tent. And it had 3 rings. How could you keep track of what's going on? You might have to come to 2 shows to see everything. Yeah, that's good. That's good. He gave away these tokens that would be good for another show, and you'll find quite a few of these on the market with coins, old coins. I like it because it shows him in his Days of 76 play. Now, he did what the earlier circuses tended to do, copying him. They had other types of entertainment besides animal and human acts. They also, according to him, showed opera. He did the theatrical production. He did morality plays. He did minstrel shows, and there was straight music concerts. So there was the regular circus, and then there was the after show. And if you wanted to stay for the after show, you had to pay extra money. Also a good idea. We'll need several panels, again, to see this ad from Geneva. Grand Dramatic Gymnastic and Operatic Troupe. Singing opera while you're doing gymnastic tricks. That's just boggles the mind. You can see women on horseback with very little clothing. There is a woman named, I believe, Carolyn Thompson, who was a girl up in Canandaigua, and she wanted in the worst way to go to the circus. And her grandmother, who had charge of her, had said no, because if God had wanted women to go around showing their legs on horseback, he would have made them that way. Kind of a non sequitur, but yeah, so there were problems sometimes with the morality of circuses because of the amount of flesh that may be shown, maybe. We still use the old circus term sometimes for pantyhose ladies, our tights. That's a circus term for the tightly knit and sewn things that would cover your flesh because you're not supposed to show bare legs. The gymnasium and the drama, and you can see here is a brilliant arrangement of the interior. There's also Japanese club dancers, all sorts of things going on. Master Charlie. And at the very end of this is a battle, a recreation of the Battle of Buena Vista. Now, this is important because this leads the way into another type of circus that people ran away to join, and that would be the Wild West show. Okay? Recreated battles between Indians and the stalwart men of the West. Outlaws attacking a stagecoach, they would reenact things like that. And so there is a local connection to Buffalo Bill. There's a nice picture of him. He lived in Rochester for a number of years. And he did his shows at what later became the Cook Opera House. At that point, it was just the Rochester Opera House on South St. Paul Street, South Street now. All gone, it's replaced by the Convention Center. So he lived at number 10 New York Street, and he was really only about a block and a half from Susan B. Anthony and her sister Mary, who had houses in that neighborhood. And this is a great picture because it shows them on the porch of their house in Rochester. 3 of his children are buried in Mount Hope. Now, integral to these Wild West shows were Native Americans. And I want to introduce you to a family who I think is just fascinating. And you may not have heard of them. They're a local Cayuga family from the Cattaraugus Reserve down in Salamanca. They took part in, cross off Canasarega, they took part in circuses, but later grew disenchanted with sometimes lack of pay, lack of respect, and they moved off and they formed their own troupe that traveled from town to town. And that is Frank, Mabel, and Leona Kenjockety. Again, all of the photos here are from the Smithsonian, from the National Museum of the American Indian. And what fascinates me is that kind of disconnect between the way they are dressed and the way traditional Iroquois dress is. What they were buying into here, dare I say succumbing to, is the national interest in the Plains Indians that were defending their lands and causing trouble out west. So they're dressed in Plains-type war bonnets, fringed dresses, and this is not especially how the Iroquois dressed at this time. And they're also using teepees. So they put on their own show. He called himself Chief Strong Fox. And there on the right is a picture of their show. Daughter Mabel was a trick rider, and she was a noted horse trainer. Here she is again. I love this. Look at the stars on her split skirt and the rosettes on the horse's bridle, and she was very, very well known. And they even gathered some of the youth from the reservation and they formed the Seneca Harmonica Band. And that was a part of their show. And I think this is, this shows real ambition and real, at least trying to educate people about the native ways of life. They did exhibitions up in Rochester at Exhibition Park. If you go onto the Rochester Library Local History website, you'll see some pictures of them in action up there. Not identified as the Kenjocketies, but it's them. Now, if we go over to Dansville and Ashen, this is kind of fun. Did you know that General Tom Thumb performed at Canasarega Hall in Dansville with P.T. Barnum? So they were there, and that building is getting refurbished. I've been working on convincing Greg O'Connell and Phil, who own the building, not to take Canasarega Hall and turn it into apartments. Don't do that. Please don't do that, because I want to help them get it on the National Register. So when Tom Thumb was there, a man named Fred Decker from Ashen, a farmer, came over to see, and oh my gosh, he was 7'2". And Barnum took note and offered him a job. And he took it up for a few years. He was hired at $35 a week to become part of Barnum's Museum down in New York City. Shortly after he joined down there, the place burned down. So he went on the road with Barnum's Circus. And it's interesting because the local papers tended to keep track of Fred and where he was. So in 1861, General George Washington Nutt, he was the younger, cuter version of Charles Stratton, Tom Thumb, younger, cuter, smaller. I have to think, looking at the photograph, the images of Fred and the image of the gentleman holding General Nutt, I think this is representational of Fred Decker. See what you think. Okay, there's Fred on the left. Now, here we are, 1861, the Ashen Giant. He was also sometimes called the Ashen Baby by Barnum. You know, that puffing up, this is how the babies look at Ashen. Ashen raises big ones. So the Dansville Advertiser notes Fred Decker was in town on Friday, as large as life and somewhat larger. It seems the Ossian baby did not like staying away from home and has returned to his ma and bread and milk. He did not even like his good clothes and towers up again in his rags most grandly. And in the same paper, they note Fred Decker, that great big feller of whom we have several times spoken, called at our office yesterday for a copy of the Advertiser. He almost entirely filled our little sanctum. He stands somewhat straighter than he used to and says he enjoys good health. He is shortly to set out on an exhibiting tour in company with General George Washington Morrison Nutt, the little 29-inch gentleman who was exhibited here a few months ago. We would like to see them together.
Wait, that wasn't supposed to be the little guy on the,
General George Washington Nutt, yes.
but it was much smaller in the first picture when he was holding him in his hand.
That's supposed to be not on the right?
He's 20 inches.
He's 29 inches tall.
No,
Okay.
no, it can't be.
No,
But that, yeah, that guy looks more like 5 feet tall.
Maybe like 6.
Well, the one on the
Because he's
right, the one on the right is a normal-sized man.
Right.
Okay, all right.
Then there's Fred Decker, who is 7'2".
Okay. But then the
We were
29
wondering if the guy
versus-
on the right is the miniature guy, but he's not.
No, no, no,
Oh, okay.
no, no. I'm sorry if that's confusing.
Yeah.
It's okay.
Yeah. I will label it.
Well, it's
Say,
probably almost 6
not-
feet tall.
Yeah,
not-
it's gotta be.
There's a guy 7'2".
Not the midget, not the dwarf,
Yeah,
no.
this is just something.
not the little person. So, going back here, Fred retired from the circus life. He returned. He started to work at the Van Ostrand's mill near Swains. Here we go from 1883, Wellsville reporter. Look how far away he gets reported on. Said that Fred Decker, the well-known through this part of the country as the Ossian baby, is in town this week. He is one of the largest men in the world, being 6 feet 10 inches tall, and correspondingly large and heavy. He is now employed in Van Ostrand's mill near Swains. Yeah, Swain used to have an S on it, not just Swain. And then eventually he did die, about 1886. And this explains the discrepancy in heights.
Yeah.
You know, I used to be 5'8". I was at the doctor's this morning. I'm now 5'6 3/4. We all shrink as we age. Death of Fred Decker the Giant. And I am reading these for the recording because I know people are not going to be able to read this. Fred Decker, better known as the Ossian Giant, died at his home at Swains Sunday night, age 56. During earlier life, he was 7 foot 2.5 inches high and weighed 325 pounds. As he grew older, he became round-shouldered, and at the time of his death was but 6'11", but only 6'11".
Yeah.
Some years ago, Mr. Decker was for a time an exhibit at a New York museum, that's Barnum's, at $30 a month. But this idle life grew distasteful to him, and he returned home, where he could enjoy the freedom of outdoor life and make practical use of his extraordinary strength. In earlier life, he did an extraordinary amount of hard work in clearing the forest, and he was famous as a hunter. His health has been broken down in the past few years. Though a giant in stature and strength, Mr. Decker was mild-mannered and a Christian. The last time we met him was on that porch of his meat store, the 29th of last May, and while waiting half an hour for an Erie train, enjoyed his conversation. And we were much pleased to hear him discuss religious matters with a faith as strong as his physical strength in his manhood prime. Decker also went around to halls in the area and sometimes would be convinced to tell about his time in New York working with Barnum and going on the road with Barnum's Circus. So here's one of our, he didn't quite run away with the circus, he was enticed to come away with the circus. But this one actually did run away with the circus. This is Clayton F. White. Handsome, good-looking guy of Dalton, Oakland, and Castile. He was born in Dalton. They moved to Oakland when he was very, very, very young. And then they moved to Castile, his family. He was what was known in the circus jargon as a candy butcher. That's someone who sells candy from a stand or up in the stands. He was a ticket taker, he was a tumbler, and very briefly, he owned his own circus. Then he became an actor and vaudevillian. He actually had his name up on the marquee in several Broadway theaters. So he went from our little area to Broadway. And his return visits to his home territory were eagerly reported on by the local papers. He kept in touch with his local friends and neighbors, as seen in this postcard provided by Tom Cook of the Nunda Historical Society. And it says, "Merry Christmas and Happy New Year." To, looks like Len and maybe Jean, also Dick from Clayton White. And that's to a P. Crozier in Oakland. And yes, he really did run away to join a circus. There's a nice article in the Castilian in 1898 that tells how that happened. And one of the correspondents to the Castilian was down in New York City to see a show that Clayton was in. And an ingenue decided to introduce him, gushing. And she said, "Let me introduce you to Mr. Clayton White." And she added mischievously, "What's the name of that place you're always telling us about, where you ran away with a circus?" "Oh yes, Castile." And Clayton said later, "I left Castile and most of my effects, incidentally receiving $10 for the latter, a dozen and odd years ago. With this small fortune in my pocket and arrayed in my Sunday clothes, I hasted myself away to a neighboring town where a circus had pitched tents for a day's performance. Everything looked so large, and the ticket wagon was so attractive that I could not take my eyes from its gorgeously painted sides. I envied the smartly uniformed young man counting tickets from the bottom of my heart. And the following morning, and many thereafter, found me, likewise industriously employed counting tickets. For the youth in uniform mysteriously disappeared that evening. A tenderfoot trick, the ringmaster said, and my willingness and my Sunday clothes won for his place. I soon became a leaper and a tumbler, and later in Nova Scotia owned a circus of my own. This was disastrous, as one day, while soaking the canvas in a lake, it was blown offshore and sank, as did my hopes and fortune. After narrowly escaping starvation, I joined a comic opera company, and this is not Clayton, but it's an acrobat. I'll go back here for a second. One of the kind of interesting things about him is he managed to mention Oakland in every show that he did. He had it set so that he would always receive a letter on stage in character, and it would be from Oakland. Let's hear about that. The friends of Clayton White, the comedian, whose boyhood days were spent here, will be pleased to hear of him again. He is playing at the Studebaker Theater in Chicago and a new comedy by George Randolph Chester, author of the Get Rich Quick, whoa, that's tough, Get Rich Quick, Welliford. And the new show is entitled 5 Times an Hour. Mr. White at one time had a summer home at Oakland, 2 miles west of Nunda. He was born in Oakland, and still has a tender spot in his heart for Oakland and the Genesee Valley. Occasionally, some old friend, it may be in New York, Washington, Chicago, or any of the larger cities, drops into a vaudeville house to see a good show and is somewhat startled in the middle of a clever sketch to hear a letter read from the stage dated Oakland, Livingston County, New York. That's White. He dates all of his stage mail from that little hamlet where he was born. So they did live in Dalton for a while, I did find. And he was related to the Harks down Dalton Way. So there is a relation to the Harks down there. I didn't work the genealogy for him, but there was an article that told about it.
Yeah, Dick White in Oakland used to sing around here.
Well, maybe talent runs in the family.
Yeah.
Maybe. Sig Sautel actually was born George Satterley. And he was born in Luzerne, New York. He was a drummer boy in the Civil War because he was too young to be a soldier. And he learned ventriloquism and magic from another soldier. So when he got out, he decided he was going to make a profession of it. But George Satterley just didn't have that theatrical ring. So he named himself Signor Sautel. Right? And people couldn't wrap their tongues around that, I guess, and they just called him Sig, because if you take the abbreviation for Signor, it's S-I-G period, and so they, oh, Sig Sautel. So he kept that. He had a wife, Ida Bell, and they took a Punch and Judy show from town to town. And they also sold soap and watches and pins and all sorts of things. And the money accumulated. And after working as a sideshow musician and a ventriloquist with Adam Forepaw's Circus, he purchased a canal boat and named it the Bell after Ida Bell, his wife. And he went up and down the Erie, the Seneca, and the Champlain canals with this boat. And, you know, low bridge, everybody down.
Yeah.
Well, when he was transporting his wagons, he had the bright idea. He made wagons that had very short spokes on their wheels, so that the wheels weren't so tall that they would make the wagon crash into a low bridge. They would be short enough that they could clear the low bridge. Pretty soon he had another boat. And what he used to do is he would, well, we'll take a look at the Sautel performers here. First time on this show. In the winter, he would tie up in one of the basins in Syracuse, and he would then use those boats as saloons. Clever. And he would also give little dog and trained pony shows on and around the boats. More money coming in. It helped to pay for his staff to stay in a hotel. So this all went very well. And then he decided that he wanted to go back on the road again. And where he used to hole up in De Ruyter, New York, over the winter, he decided to come for warmer climes. And he moved his winter base to Homer, New York. And he built 3 octagonal buildings, painted them red so they looked like circus tents, and he built a hotel for his employees. And there was an animal training ring, so they could do the ring training, you know, the circus acts that required that. They also had a barn for the animals, and then one that looked like that was his house, he and Ida Bell's. Today, only the animal training ring remains, and it is on the Landmark Society's 5 to Revive list. Don't know the status of it right now, but it's not painted red anymore. There are so many stories that go around of his time in Homer. And some of the most charming things, you know, he was a ventriloquist. And they remember him going into the general stores and the candy store. And when the kids would come in, he would pretend, well, he'd throw his voice. So it sounded like, help, let me out of here, let me me out of here. So it was coming from a trunk or down in the basement, and he would play games with the kids. And can you imagine being a kid in Homer at that time and growing up with this larger-than-life circus figure? Well, I don't know the numbers, but I'm imagining that there were some kids in Homer who grew up and decided to follow the circus. The novel Chad Hannah, there's a movie too, Chad Hannah. Supposedly the circus and the circus master that Chad joins the circus with is modeled on Sig Sautel, Signor Sautel. And the only other thing really that's kind of remaining that you could go see, if you go to Circus World Museum in Baraboo, Wisconsin, you can see the pony wagon. And look at what a glorious thing that is. So that's on display. These are some of the main ones that came from our region. There are many, many more. I started another list, just towns and names, and I looked at it, I said, that's kind of boring. Maybe we'll do Circus too and find out more about them. But the question has been runaways. Were there runaways to the circus? Oh my goodness, yes. Yes. Here's an article saying Elmer Kennedy, a young boy of Yonkers, ran away with the circus, which was at Yonkers Monday, and was caught last night at the New York Central Freight Yards where the circus was loading. It was so well known that kids and people did run away to the circus that there was a movie at one point called The Flying Twins, billed as the thrilling story of two little girls who ran away with the circus but soon tire of its hardships and disappointments. It's a morality play. Don't run away with the circus. You're just going to, it's a hard life and you're going to be disappointed. Yeah. Really, what you see quite a bit are apprenticeships. And what I've been surprised to learn is that children as young as 3 to 7 years old would be signed away by their parents to go apprentice with a circus act. And some of them never left the circus. They became famous in their own right. For contortionists, the younger you get them, the better. While those bodies are still really flexible. Same with aerialists, if they're going to be the ones that are caught, not the catchers. I would not want a 4-year-old catching me, right? Yeah. And equestrians also. Now this is an image that comes from that magazine that I showed you at the very beginning, the Circus Scrapbook from 1931. And this is quite an old carte de visite, which these acts, by the way, would have made up, and they could sell them to people in the audience to get extra money coming in. And so there are still quite a few of these left to be had. And this is the Whitbys. Harry and Margaret Whitby were an equestrian act. They were very talented. Harry was considered one of the best horse trainers in the United States during his time. He was an Englishman. And pictured with him are 2 of the 4 apprentices that he and his wife adopted and taught the trade. They were adopted, so Elvira Whitby and John Whitby. They appeared with over 20 circuses because sometimes acts moved from circus to circus. Disagreements, pay increases, living conditions. Elvira retired in 1880 after she suffered a very bad fall while she was performing in Jamestown. And again, this is from the Circus Scrapbook. What I like here is down where I've got my little red arrow, it says apprentice. And this is what happened with many of these young kids. Now, from a societal standpoint, why would this happen? Why would you sign over a child who might be really good at turning somersaults and doing cartwheels, why might you want to sign them over to a circus?
Times were tough financially.
Times were tough, no contraception, many more children in some cases than you could take care of and give everybody a good upbringing and enough food. So sometimes these kids would be signed over for an apprenticeship period. Usually they could leave when they were 18 or 20. And, what I've found time and time again, though, is that many of these children just never left the life. So there was something in it that satisfied them, that they were done well by some of their trainers. And elopements. Yeah, they happen so often that there was a play called Eloped with a Circus Man. The last act was a real circus by noted performers who ride, leap, and tumble. A portable ring is carried and the piece is a success. In the country hotel, while the circus talent are at breakfast, the beefsteak is pounded with sledgehammers, notoriously tough, and the company good-naturedly sing the anvil chorus. Bum, get tender, bum, yeah. This is what I had started to do. I'll let you take a look at a couple of them, but I have to think of a nicer format for this and get some more pictures. Utica, Henry Carey became a trick rider. Syracuse, Dan Costello, trick rider, vaulter, and clown. Potsdam, Clyde. We have people from Canandaigua. We have people from Rochester. A couple people from Buffalo, from Fredonia. And so there is no one area of New York State that really stands out as the locus for producing circus performers, but it was a statewide, and dare I say national, trend. This was an era where being with a circus meant that you were housed, you were clothed, you were taken care of medically, you were fed. That's not such a bad deal in the days when there was no social security net for you. Now the circus does live on in our area. How many of you have ever seen at a checkout counter those Kohl's tickets? Yeah, and the Kohl family has been going for well over 60 years, although another gentleman has bought into the circus. Well over 60 years in existence, and they cater primarily to school children. They feel that every school child should know the joy of experiencing a circus and the wonder of a circus. So here's a couple of pictures for the Kohl Circus from the older days, and these are again from the Yates County History Center. Master James Cole II, age 9, the youngest elephant trainer in the country.
Wow.
Yeah. And that was their Christmas card one year. There he is, James and Sonny Cole. Now, given how many death by elephant articles I've read in the last year or so, that's kind of terrifying. And this was their compound in Penn, Circus Land, they called it. And out back, they had a training ring. Look at the elephants doing that act. Amazing. And a little house in the background.
Yeah, there's no security around it.
Yeah, no big fence. And so circuses have for centuries provided happy times for children and the adults too, as long as your 16-year-old daughter doesn't run off with a circus man like one did in Wayland. They did find her in Elmira, hauled her back. That happened a lot. It did happen a lot. But happy times for children, and we're going to end this with a Cole clown. I knew you'd like that. So thank you very much for taking in my debut of this program. I hope you enjoyed it.
Very fun.
There may be a circus too, but
First question that I have is that circus place that the Coles had in Penn Yan.
yeah.
Is any trace of that still there?
I don't know. The Penn Yan History Center just sent me these this morning.
Okay.
Yeah, I had to do a call reminder and say, hey, remember that list of photos that I wanted? Yeah, could you maybe send it, twice now I've asked them. And they did send them to me, but those have all just been added this morning. Ooh, ooh.
Yeah.
So I didn't have a chance to ask them whether Circus Land still exists.
Do we have other questions?
I got it.
Yes,
Sometimes you wonder where terms originated, like dog and pony show.
that's where it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, Dog and Pony Show. And the other one is Jump on the Bandwagon.
Yeah.
Because when one circus owner, I think it was Adam Forepaugh, was going through a town and there was a political candidate, possibly even for the presidency, also walking in the parade waving, and he saw the guy was getting tired and he said, hey, come on, jump on the bandwagon. And that came, hey Rube, that's circus distress call. There are many terms that we still use today that come, I won't work for peanuts. Okay, that's for the elephants. There's so many terms that come from circus that have entered our language. And it's nice if people kind of remember where they came from.
Could you introduce the aerial list again?
Oh, Maria.
Maria.
And I imagine that if you want to see, Maria has images of herself flying on the trapeze.
Oh. And we'd also like to hear how you got involved, I think, in
Yeah.
this, wouldn't we?
And I'm going to interject before she
Maybe a
starts.
demonstration.
You know the term a leotard?
Mhm.
That actually comes from the French trapeze artist Jules Léotard, the leotard after the tights that he wore, and he was the original man on the flying trapeze that all the women went over. Yeah, so.
Hi, my name is Maria Lombardo. You want to just ask me questions? Or?
She lives 2 roads over from me, and we go mushrooming. Seeking out the wild mushrooms that can be used for your soup, your stew. We're not doing those funny kind of mushrooms. Just the edibles and sometimes medicinals.
That's true. I think I reached, I don't know how we got in touch actually, but somehow we found out, huh?
There was, she said, how did you get started?
Oh, okay, yeah. This is my husband, Lou. So how I got started in this, I always thought that it would be great to be on a flying trapeze, but how much does that happen when you live in this area? And years ago, my husband and I went to the Ontario Science Centre in near Toronto, and they just happened to have inside there a large trampoline that you could put on. This is when we were dating, and there was people standing with you. You could. There was a halter. What is it called? Harness. Thank you. And there's people on either side with holding the ropes, and I bounced, and I just like to roll around and around, and and people started gathering around, and so then I knew that I wanted to be an aerialist, and I started doing aerial workouts about 10 years ago because I like to work out, but I broke my leg as a teenager, and my ankle is end-stage arthritis, so I can't be a runner anymore. So I started doing aerial apparatus, and 2019, Rock City Circus brought a flying trapeze to Rochester, and I haven't looked back. I was there for their first class. I go 3 times a week, and Becky came and saw me. It's my little addiction. So.
I just want to tell people if you get a chance to see the Rock City Circus at the Fringe Festival,
Oh,
you will be more entertained than you could possibly imagine. That time went by so fast, and my mind was exploded by seeing what those older people and younger people are doing.
I think I'm the oldest one there.
In any case, if you get a chance to go, you should go. It's absolutely amazing.
Are you the ones that danced on the buildings going down?
No, that's Bandaloop.
Vandaloo.
That's I saw them in
Yes.
2013, and that's off right near Strong Museum.
Yeah.
And there was a crowd of people, and I ended up on the road. There was just people, and I was lying down, and my sister ended up right next to me, just by happenstance. And as I'm watching them, I thought, why didn't they call me and invite me to do this? And I turned to my sister. I said, "Aren't you jealous?" And she said, "No." I knew the whole crowd all wanted to be up on the side of the buildings, and it was kind of stunning to me to find out that they didn't. So, yeah, Rock City Circus, it's a lot of fun. I'm open to questions. I don't know what else you need to say.
Do you do the silks?
I have done the silks. I've done the silks. I've done the hoop. I've done the pole. I've done the rope. I've done all of them. But flying trapeze is
Best. Okay.
there's nothing
She
like it.
posts videos
All
on
the time.
Facebook. I love it when I wake up and then there's another video showing her, and there is a net. You will be glad to know there's a net under her when she's
I'm
doing
glad to know
these.
that too.
Yeah.
So you
it's-
didn't
it's
get into
fascinating
this
to
until
watch.
later in your life.
I got into it in December 2019. December 7th, 2019, I got to take my first
word.
class. I know, I feel really lucky.
Did you like to swing as a kid?
I still do. I still climb trees. I still enjoy all those things. I don't think my vestibular system has matured.
Would you say how people can see that? Say your name again, so.
My name is Maria Lombardo.
And what's your face? Is it Facebook page or what?
Yeah.
Rock City Circus is probably a good place.
Rock
to
City
look.
Circus is a
Yeah,
good one.
they have a website.
I
Yeah.
am a special education teacher and a social worker, so my name is. If you want to ask me privately, I'll tell you.
Don't they have a demonstration? Like what is it? It's like the second Friday of every month or something too.
I don't think they do that anymore.
Okay.
They used to.
All right.
But,
But if you look on their website, they do have like little shows in addition to the Fringe that you can see.
I think that I do post reels now, and I leave them public. So I'll tell you my name. If I don't know you, I probably won't accept a friend request, just so you know. My name is Ria. My name is Maria. So I use Ria, and my middle name is Therese, T-H-E-R-E-S-E. Ria Therese. If you want to get to know me, I'll friend you.
What kind of special training did you have to do, or nothing?
Nothing. You when you first go up, you have a harness. It's a safety belt. It's a belt,
Okay.
and there's safety lines,
Okay.
and which is a good thing because I've broken my neck several times. It would be a great trust building activity for a for a corporation because you have to trust.
You have to have great upper body strength.
Well, you will build it. I mean, it's a muscle. I mean, it's if you do it, you build strength. You don't have to have it to start because you'll be so terrified you won't let go.
Do you have children first?
I have 2 children.
And they don't worry about you.
They've known her their whole lives. That's all I'm going to
They
say.
wouldn't know. I don't think so.
I'm not too worried about her.
Are you a solo act? Now, do 2 people go up? Do you tumble and then grab hands and,
Yeah.
You do?
Yeah.
There's two of you up there then.
So when you go up onto the trapeze, it's about 3 stories high, and there's a platform. There might be 5 people on the platform, but each person flies by themselves, and they might fly across to the catcher.
Oh.
So when you're on the trapeze, for the most part, you're by yourself. Sometimes when we train, we do tandem swings, and sometimes in shows there's a tandem swing, but it's pretty much, we might do it as a team, but when you actually do your trick, it's one person.
Thank you.
Wow.
Anybody want to come
Isn't
play?
this a nice bonus? I was so happy when I saw Maria.
Anybody want to come play? It's really fun.
Well, thank you very much. Any other questions for Jane?
Well, I have a statement over by the cookbooks, which I hope you'll take a look at because some of them look very interesting. I do have my program flyers and some business cards if you know of a group in the area that would like this or any other of the about 15 programs that I have. It's got all the contact information and a little bit of information on the programs. I'm always trying to add something new. So have at it.
Okay, and thank you let's have another round of applause. So much, Jane. And don't forget, there's animal crackers and other cookies over there. So thank you all for coming out tonight.